All right, all right, all right, all right. Let me just load this up, check what's going on. Bismillah. Right, so let me just load. Right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All right, people. I just want to check the audio is coming through all loud and clear. It is all right. No, shukran, people. Bismillah, inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم. People, all right. I've wanted to discuss quite a few interesting things with us tonight. Let me just, whilst I'm just waiting for people to tune in, click like and share, I'm just going to see what's going on here. Right. Just, when you're trying to click one thing and all of a sudden there's like, there's like all these other things just opening up and you're like, Abe yaar. Right, so let's just take a look at what we've got here. So, people, let me bring up today's themes. You guys work your magic whilst I'm doing that. Spread the love. That's what it's all about. Spread the love. So, right, I see. Look, it's showing me now. It gives me some of the Facebook feedback as well. There it is. Allahu Akbar. When the battle chooses you. Allahu Akbar. I want to take a look at today some from the Quranic guidance, Surah Al-Fil. Okay. One of the shortest surahs of the Quran. From the last 10, if you're counting backwards, and a Makki surah, something everybody knows, we all memorize, we all recite it, and just looking at a few perspectives on it in light of today's theme, which is when the battle chooses you. I also want to take a look at this discussion of it's a fascinating one of parasocial psychology. It's really quite fascinating what is meant by that. And when we say parasocial interactions or parasocial psychology, parasocial relationships, those kind of relationships that we feel we have established or that we feel are integral to our lives, and they are virtual, in some ways non-real. I mean, in many ways non-real, although they may feel real to us. And just on some occasions, in fact, one may say on many occasions, monodirectional. So they're just one direction they have. What are the benefits, if any of these? What are the harms? Let's take a little look at that. And I thought, you know what? It's been a while since we've shared some history. So let's speak today about the great pre-Islamic battle in which it is alleged that the Prophet ﷺ, regarding which he said, Allahu A'lam, the narrations may be weak, that this is a day in which the Arabs rose against, that they gained justice against the Sassanids. So that's a fascinating one, known as Zhi-Qaar. And it's all to do with or centered around a woman. And then counterbalanced by another main character right throughout this battle, who's also a woman. So, what is all of that about? A strength in stories. Let's take a little look at that. Okay, so before any of that, let's see who do we have tuned in today, people. Mufti bro on a Monday morning. Amen to that. All right. I take it the audio, you know what? I didn't even do an audio check from the system. Yeah, it is. I just want to check it's the right mic it's picking up. Right. Moe Omar Sultan, Claire, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Glenn Lawson. All right, what a name, Glenn Lawson. All right, I like it. Salam Mufti from Belgium. Wah, kya baat hai. Audio is good. Michael Dempsey. Michael, it's been a while. I hope you're keeping well. Scorpio, ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome. The beard. The beard, Yasin Palwala, the beard. Ab ka kare? Right, yeah. It is making that love. Yeah, what this one? Yeah, it's all about spreading love, huh? Hello. Right, who else do we have? Ayub al-Maliki. All right, from the continent. Good to see you here. Salams Mufti from Leicester Sharif. Stadia Mac, Ahlan wa Sahlan. I'm from H Town. I'm not sure where H Town is, but it's the Asim. It's not any Asim. On that note, I'll share with you. Um, they say in Riwayatul Hadith, Kullu Asim, with the exception of, is it Asim al Ahwal, or with the exception of one Asim, they say every Asim that appears in a narration of Hadith is weak. That's a قاعدة almost, or a ضابط hadithi, with the exception of one. It's in the Ilal of Tirmidhi, but almost every Asim that appears, except of course our guest here, because he's the Asim. Allah. Awesome. Right, so H Town is Houston. Yeah, salam. Houston, we have a problem. So, people, what is going on? Let's take a look. Right, people. Scoop, I was speaking earlier on to Nora as well, just sending a message. Hopefully, you guys will catch up and we'll chat as well about, with the Discord, on Discord, inshallah. Right, so. Right, can you make a dua? I have a job interview coming up. What, right now? Rohan, you have a job interview right now? Sab dua mein lag jao. Everybody start dua. Allah. Ameen. May Allah make things easy for you. Ameen. You know what? Go at it. Throw your heart at it. Go with all the passion. There's a quote I have it on my chain, actually. It's beautiful quote, mantra for life. It says, my razor, it says on the, wherever you go with all your heart. That's something. That is. What do you think of the recent Daniel Haqiqatjou situation? I don't know. What is his situation? I don't really keep up to date with these brethrens. Allah, Allah. What is, oh, is this the thing? You know, I saw this clip going viral. I say viral, but as in being shared a lot, about something about he was in some conference and he was asked to repeat a shahada. And I don't know what conference it was, but I take it it's, and he was asked to say some his, you know, his kalimatul tawheed again, but then say after it that he would not support rebellion against the rulers or something like this. If that's the thing, yeah. You know, look, the Salafi kalima. Allah, Allah. You know what I would say is, look, that, you know, many paths will splinter from the path that takes you to God. Don't let these distractions distract you. Forget sectarianism, you know, there's nothing in it. People, they invest an entire lifetime's worth of energy, and then often it's the regret, you know, on many occasions it's not even the fact that people don't realize what they were fighting for was not as black and white, but it's the fact that they feel now all of that would have been in vain if I no longer stand by what I stood for. That's a heart-crushing position to be in. You know, may Allah, you know, may Allah melt these people's hearts towards this compassion as well. I mean, because, you know, many of these people, they do spend a lifetime dedicated to Islam. Many of these people probably pray many more nawafil, probably recite more Quran than maybe many of us. They probably do a lot of devotion and commitment to aspects of Islam that, if compared to, I'll speak for myself, if compared to me, I'd feel possibly embarrassed about myself. I mean, but it's just that their devotion at times is misplaced. You know, they, instead of God, they establish a metonymic relationship with Islam. So metonymy is, it's like a, you see, metonymy is, it's like a kind of metaphor, if you like, although metaphor and metonymy often contrasted. But metonymy is where you have an object that is related to a different thing or linked to a different thing, but you're using that as the subject. So, for example, if I was to use the word brains to really refer to intelligence, if I say, oh, you know, he's got an amazing brain, oh, you know, you're a wonderful brain, or you're saying, you're using words, oh, you're a sight for sore eyes. You're using a word, you're referring to a part of the person or the object or the thing or the entity in relation to the whole. This is called metonymy, okay, or a metonymic relationship to something. In Arabic, this is also falls under qism al-majaz. And they call it sometimes, you know, it's got either al-juz or al-irsali. But the point is, in this metonymic relationship with Islam, is that, or with God, is that they're saying, You see, so God is the goal, but then God is linked to this concept of faith, belief, rituals, um, instructions, guidance, and they become transfixed on a part of this, thereby missing almost the goal. But still, strangely, they are hooked on a part that is linked, but it's not the main thing. Sure, it may be, nobody's to say it has no value. So they may become fixated on things like, oh, the beard in Islam, the woman's hijab in Islam, Aqidah in Islam. Allah has these, the Rububiyyah and the Uluhiyyah and the three tripartite division of Tawheed. Thereby, which is linked to ultimately all these topics are in relation, they have a metonymic relationship to God as a metonymy, but they miss the actual maqsad, which was Allah. So, yeah, may Allah, it's a journey for all of us. So, I don't know what this popping in to say hello. Really appreciate your videos. Pie prod, I appreciate it. Yeah. Right. So, Imam Kazi, Allahu Akbar. Allah bless you. It's awesome to see you online. Right. Well, Azarati, much love for the super sticker as always. Allah bless you. Right, let's get Ayub, how come you have a good opinion of those brethren? Is it right? Truly believe their motives is misplaced and well aware of that, at the same time embarrass front themselves with that. You see, part of the answer to this, let's move into today's session with some of the quotes, and you will find the answer to what we're saying. First of all, Fahad Alam, love you with all my heart. Love you too, Yar. Allah keep you always smiling. Right, so let's see. These were some of. Now, this is part of the response to what Ayub was just asking. Ayub, huh? Allah. Ayub as-Sakhtiyani, one of the great tabi'is and scholars of hadith. This is a quote from Maulana Jalaluddin Ar-Rum, that we fight a fierce war within. What is the point of fighting with others? It's not that we are naive, that we can't understand, but let people, we should not allow our positive energy to be drained by the negativity or at times toxicity we find in the world. You see, we can't always control our environment. We can't control who, what, where, when, why we experience certain things. We can't always, maybe sometimes we can, but in life we won't be able to always control that. What happens to us, we encounter, how we encounter them. What we can control, however, is how we respond and react to it. Remember that even if it doesn't appear so, but to a great point is still a choice. Don't allow yourself to be drained. Just let it go. Allah. Right, so the battles that choose us, because that's speaking about, it's not necessarily about physical battles. I saw this quote yesterday. I thought, you know what, let's share this. Uh, Mama said, son, you can't walk out of your own story. Wow. I saw it. It just hit me that this is your story. It is my story. It is our story. We can't just walk out of it. So why not try to change its perspective, change its filter, change something? Because ultimately, these things are that we have some control over them. We have a control about how we feel, at least. And sure, sometimes feeling is the most difficult. Let me say this: feeling is the most difficult thing to control. Let me give you guys a quick tip and then we'll move on to the session. In CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the great breakthroughs, if you like, of CBT is to emphasize, to highlight, and then create an awareness around the relationship, the triangular relationship of these three: cognition, your thoughts, your behavior, and your emotions. So, what's going on in there? Thoughts. Oh, you're a loser, you're a waste, you're a failure, you're a blah 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 blah. Okay. Or positive, or whatever's going on in there. Your behavior and your emotions. If you're to describe anything that you are to describe with the word feel, I feel angry, I feel worried, I feel anxious, I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel depressed, I feel tired, I feel anything that you are describing with the word feel is this emotionality. It's an emotion. Okay. That's as far as we're concerned. This is the most difficult of the triad. These three. So you've got cognition, behavior, and emotions. Emotions are the most difficult to change suddenly. Like if, for example, you're feeling sad, or you're feeling a bit depressed, or you're feeling anxious, you can't just say to yourself, hey, feel happy, and you'll feel happy. Emotions are the farthest that for us to reach. But the great thing that CBT shows you is that these three are linked like a triangle. And by altering the other two, you automatically alter the third. So just as in a triangle, if you change the angle of this one and this one, the angle of that one changes. So similarly, these three have an inseparable relationship. So what you can do if you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling worried, or you're feeling, okay, I can't just change it by saying, hey, be happy, but what can I change? Okay, emotion is difficult. I can change my behavior and my cognition. So behavior, first thing, sit up straight. You're standing, stand up straight. Take a deep breath. Smile. You may think this is bizarre. It isn't. If you force yourself to just smile, sit up straight, stand up straight, relax, go into a relaxed state. Space, maybe you're sitting back, hold your feet up on a footstool for a couple of seconds, stand up, take some deep breaths, some nice strides of a little walk, smile. 90 seconds you do that. 90 seconds. That's not much. You will immediately face, your body will go through a physiological change. Guaranteed. So you can change your behavior, you can change your cognition. So if you're feeling anxious, you can tell yourself something. Look, tawakkal ala Allah. It is in the hands of God. You know, if you're worried about something, maybe you're worried about risk. Oh no, what's gonna smile, remind yourself. We covered the hadith. What about the birds that set off in the morning? They don't know where they're going to get their risk from. Allah feeds them. Will He not feed you? Tell yourself something. Maybe you're anxious about something else. Say, look, it's okay. Smile. Just 90 seconds you do it. Bang, just like that. Your emotions start to change. So these are cheat codes that psychology has obviously discovered. And honestly, they're great. I use them all the time. I'm going to tell you, I honestly use them whenever I do remember, like, let's say if in time I've been feeling suddenly, let's say I felt a bit anxious about something, or if something like that happens, I become aware that I'm feeling anxious, I will straight away I'll adjust my posture, I'll adjust my breathing, I'll smile, and within minutes you'll forget. It's amazing, but hopefully that can be of some help to you guys. Okay, so sharing some psychology tips with you people. Let's get straight into what I wanted to discuss. Oh, before anything, a poem, yeah, a poem. Oh my God, I had a poem here somewhere as well. Yeah, let me, first of all, one of phase. See the battle, when the battle chooses you, people. This is an epic poem of Faiz Ahmed Faiz, that he says, Jo ruke to kohe gira the hum, jo chale to jaan se guzar gaye. Allah. Wow. Wow. He says, Jo ruke, when we stood firm, to kohe gira the hum. We were like the immovable mountains. Jo chale, to jaan se guzar gaye. But when it came to moving, he says we move, as in the line says to jaan se guzar gaye, which means that we even gave our lives in this thing. That, wow, that, obviously with a play on words of movement and standing still in the Urdu language, movement linked to then even having moved on. That such was the passion. Allah, jo ruke to kohe girate hum, jo chale to jaan se guzar gaye. There was a classic that I wanted to share with you guys. Allah, it is phase is as well. I just had it here somewhere. Let me take un momentico, people. All right, here it is. I knew I had it here somewhere. It's a classic that I have read before. And why not? Yeah, why not? Mujhse pehli si mohabbat mere mehboob na maang. This, when you speak of phase, we have to cover this. We'll cover this quickly. We'll jump into the topic. Mujhse pehli si mohabbat mere mehboob na maang. That don't ask me for that first love. No es posible. So, in Arabic, there's the فَمَا الْحُبُّ إِلَّا لِلْحَبِيبِ الْأَوَّلِ. Allah. That love was the first love. Huh? says, मैंने समझा था कि तू है तो दरख्शां है हया अल्लाह तेरा गम है तो गमे दहर का झगड़ा क्या है. This is a classic, people. Epic. One of the most greatest ghazals ever written. It's by Fez. He says that I thought that if we had you, this life would have been enlightened. Tera gham hai to gham-e dahar ka jhagda kya hai. This is a beautiful play on tropes, or just tropes that the Urdu poetry uses. And gham is one, melancholy or depression, which in this era of poetry was glamorized. I mean, that may sound bizarre to people now, but you know, it's, he says that if we had your gham, then why would we need the gham of the ages? तेरी सूरत से है आलम में बहारों को सबात तेरी आंखों के सिवा दुनिया में रखा क्या. He says that it is with your form that this world finds stability in its form. Huh? क्या बात है. तेरी आंखों के सिवा दुनिया में रखा क्या है. This is metonymy. You see, when we spoke about metonymy, that apart, he says, putting your eyes aside, what else is there in this world? What was that other poem that yeah, it'll come to me, you know, where he says about the Urdu language. But anyway, let's तू जो मिल जाए तो तकदीर निगूं हो जाए. This is an epic line of his. You have to focus on this. That तू जो मिल जाए तो तकदीर निगूं हो जाए. Nigun is to kind of succumb, to be low, like under control, if you like. That if we had you, it is as if we have conquered fate. See, the battles that choose you, huh? He says, now this is the epic part. Yunatha. Look, check this out. Yunatha. He says, it wasn't like that. Maine faqat chaha tha, yu ho jaye. Allah, Allah. Honestly, this line just kills me. He says, Yunatha. It wasn't that, by the way, he's saying that isn't how it was. Maine faqat chaha tha, yu ho jaye. Allah. It is only that I wished or desired that had it been so. Wow, look at the etiquette at which he's saying that. That tu jo mil jaye to takdir nigun ho jaye. Yeah. If we had you, we would have conquered fate. You na tha. Okay. No, you na tha. It wasn't such, by the way. Maine faqat chaha tha yu ho jaye. It's only, I only wished that had it been so. Honestly, wow. लौट जाती है उधर को भी नजर क्या कीजिए. That the glance, it still goes in that direction. अब भी दिलकश है तेरा हुस्न मगर क्या कीजिए. He says that even now your beauty is, it's mind-boggling. It's, you know, so irresistible. Magar kya kijiye? But what can one do? And that could be taken literally, but it could be taken symbolically about the allure of this world. और भी दुख हैं ज़माने में मोहब्बत के सिवा, राहतें और भी हैं वसल की राहत के सिवा. See, once again, that could be taken at its value or symbolically. That there are other, he's saying that there are other greater problems in this world than the problem of love. Allah. And there are greater blisses or joy, moments of joy, experiences of joy than the joy of union. But that's wow, honestly. You know, Faiz, he has some epic poetry. I believe it's his as well, that ज़माने ने तेरी याद से बेगाना कर दिया, तुझसे भी दिल फरेब हैं, गम रोज़गार के. Hi, hi, hi. Honestly, yeah, I get distracted, man. I get distracted. You know what? Today we're going to speak about a story. So, okay, we'll come to that. Let's get on with what we want to cover. Can we send in anything while the show is on? 7 earths and 7 heavens. Acha, yes, you can send it in. If it's something urgent, of an urgent nature, you can super chat it in, man. Then I'll take a look at it. I'll take a look at them anyway, but I have to get on with what I would like to speak about. So I want to bring our attention, people, to Surah 105, which is Surah Al-Fil, a Makki surah, and a Makki surah with 5 verses, Surah Al-Fil, the surah of the elephant. And it's something we know all too often. But let's go over it and take a look at a few perspectives. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. That did you not see how or what your Lord did with the people of the elephants? Did your Lord not render their plot useless? And did he not send over them birds ababil? ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل, pelting these small kind of stones, almost pelts, at these elephants. فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. And then he enabled them to become like an eaten crop. Okay, meaning disheveled, scattered, lacking life, in dissolution, in disarray, going awry, and just distorted. So, right now, there's a few ways of looking at this surah. Firstly, there's immediately a kind of history that jumps at us, leaps right at us. That what was this incident? And it's an incident that in some way we know, everybody knows something about it. And that is about Abraha of the Aksumite kingdom. So the Aksumite kingdom was from the Habasha, the Abyssinian region, which was East Africa, that is close to the Arabian Peninsula. There was a kingdom, a Christian kingdom, and during the rule of Abraha, he had crossed over and he had annexed South Arabia, which would be mainly most of modern day Yemen, and that was all under the Aksumite rule. So Abraha, he spent a considerable amount of time in southern Arabia. He'd gone there, he'd consolidated his rule, and he had brought over, as part of his troops and armies, several elephants. And one of the things he did is secured his rule in whatever parts of Arabia he could. Now, there's certain narratives that he came to hear of, whether it was of the Kaaba or the Muslim rule, or not, sorry, not Muslim, but he came to hear of these other faiths and things. And at that time, there were many Kaabas, by the way, in Arabia. So previously in Arabia, there were probably anything between 20 to 30 different Kaabas in different regions of Arabia. So he set about to demolish some of these Kaabas, or to kind of subdue the people, and he took his armies. Now, what's interesting is, so this story is what, and he sets out, and in this journey he decides to attack the Kaaba in Makkah al-Mukarramah as well. And but before he can, his army is kind of laid to waste like eaten crops. So this is what we know of the story, but what about the detail? Rather, I would say, what about the perspective? Okay, so a common, one way of looking at this, we'll come to these perspectives. One way of looking at this is a well narrated, commonplace narrative that is very traditional, coming through the whole story. Another way is looking at different interpretations that other mufassirin have also put forward, and then maybe reconciling with, well, how does history view this, and what about other um, other resources, historical resources, that may give a perspective on this story. What do they say? So, for example, some of the Byzantines, do they speak of, because they were they were communicating, or well aware, they were communicating as well, but they were also documenting the some of the accomplishments of Abraha, the Byzantines, because they were Christian as well, and they had an alliance with the Aksumite kingdom in the south. So they do speak of Abraha in Arabia, but what do they say? And how do we then, does that lend a perspective on events? Does it say that this didn't happen? Does it say it did happen? So let's take a look at these things. But before we do any of that, I think what's really important, what's really important is that these surahs in the Quran, they primarily, even if they are nested in history, so sure, this Surah Al-Fil is, the narrative is nested, it's anchored in a historical event. It's talking about that. But what's the purpose of this surah? Is it here to teach us history? Is Allah trying to say, okay, let me teach people who will read this some history? Is that the primary focus? Certainly isn't. That may be a subsidiary point. It may be something, a byproduct of what's happening as you're engaging and reading the surah of the Quran. But that's not the focus. Allah does not tell you this person's name was Abraha. Allah does not tell you when this event happened. Allah does not even tell you the details of what's going on. Where did Abraha arrive? How many people did he take? Was there an army? Where did he get to? How long did this go on? None of this is being told, because this is not the purpose. This is not what you would say the primary focus of the Quran. It is not to teach historical lessons. It is not a history book in that sense that, okay, today's lesson is we're going to learn about the Aksumite kingdom. Who was one of the kings? What did he do? In what year did he appear? How long did he live? What was his reign like? How did he cross into the Arabian Peninsula? How long did he stay there? No. This is not the focus of the Quran. If you know that, good for you. More power to you. But it's not what the Quran is here about. The purpose of this is for Allah to teach us that in life you may find yourself unwillingly, not by your choice at times. Maybe on some occasions it is by your choice, but on many occasions in life, against your will, facing an insurmountable battle. Something that, at the face of it, it seems bizarre, ridiculous, it seems, that there's going to be any good outcome to this. It's a David versus Goliath incident. That it is just astronomical what you are looking at. But don't lose hope. In your eyes, it is impossible. But it's not from your eyes that this matters. Allah. Maybe Allah has decreed something else. That is what this surah is here to teach us. That against ridiculous odds, whatever it is throwing at you, the vicissitudes of fate, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. That stay strong, that don't waver, have faith. It shall pass. That is the message, the primary message of this surah. The primary message. It is to remind you that Allah is. And these things, our problems, our crises, sure, their existence is like non-existence. And in that moment, to just smile. That is the primary focus of Surah Al-Fil. And in many ways, it's even this, the central trope, the theme of this surah, Al-Fil, the elephant. A symbol of strongly and firmly standing strength, force, and courage. People see that, just as symbolically speaking, the fil, the elephant, fil is Arabic for elephant, it symbolizes a force to be reckoned with. That's amazing when you think about it. So in these 5 verses, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil, that goes right to فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. That is what these verses are about. So when you read these, whatever you're facing, whatever it is, whether you faced it or whether you're worried about facing something, in many ways symbolically, and it's almost counterintuitively that you have this symbol of an elephant as well that just stands, just charges through something. And although in the story, in the narrative, it's used to charge against, that's the unfathomable pressure coming against as a force of destruction. But yet even that dissipates. So that's something I want to focus on, just highlight, Okay, so that's the most important thing we take away from Surah Al-Fil, these 5 verses. Now coming to perspective on these. Right, so we understand this incident is nested in Abraha of the Aksumite kingdom, and he comes up. In the traditional um, ubiquitous narrative that we have, that people often say that, so this happens arguably in the year that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is born. That's why that year is called also Amul Fil. And you see that symbol once again of this, of the power, the rigor, the kind of the tenacity that is symbolically associated with Al-Fil, in some ways also reflect the majesty of the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in this year, it is said that in the year that the Prophet was born, that Abraha came to, whilst he was going up north, he he goes to certain places and he's told that there is a Kaaba that people worship Allah at, and they don't. He was a Christian, by the way, but they're not Christians. So he says, "Well, I'll go and destroy this, um, Kaaba," and then what happens is he needs someone to guide him because he doesn't know where the Kaaba is. So this is the general story that we have, and so he finds this character who's the Judas of Islam, or pre-Islam, Judas of the Kaaba, and that is Abu Rigal. Abu Rigal, which is then commonly used as a name to mean Judas, almost in the Arabic sense. So if somebody says that's an Abu Rigal, that they mean it's like in English saying a Judas. So Abu Regal says to him, "Yeah, sure, if you grease my palms, I'm sure, uh, I'm sure I can guide you to the Kaaba in Mecca." So he does, and Abu Regal guides him to where the Kaaba is. So Abraha reaches the outskirts of the Haram, and there he meets the grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdul Muttalib, and here this the grandfather of the Prophet has some camels that he's tending to, and as the elephants are approaching, um, the grandfather of the Prophet goes to take care of his camels because they're going into chaos, and so Abraha says to him that, "Hey, who are you?" And he identifies himself and he says that, "You're worried about your camels. I'm going to destroy this Kaaba of yours." It's a very famous quote, that he says, "I'm going to destroy this Kaaba and you're worried about your camels." And the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ says, "Ana Rabbul Ibil," that I'm the kind of owner. They use the word Rabb also meant like master or owner or like Lord, but not in the sense of, I mean, it does mean in that sense, but it was also commonly used, especially pre-Islam. It was commonly used to mean people that owned something. So if you own this house, you're called Rabbul Bayt. After Islam, and with the whole connotations of shirk, people stopped using it as much. But so he says, "Ana Rabbul Ibil," I'm the owner of these. He says, "Walil Bayti Rabbun Yahmi." Allah. He says, "You're going to destroy the house, as in the Kaaba. The Kaaba has a Lord that will protect it." He says, this is my duty. Let me just take care of this. Don't worry, Allah will take care of his own. And that is a beautiful concept in and of itself, of tawakkul and reliance on Allah. So this is the popular widespread narrative that we have, and that as he was charging these birds, and they're not quite sure exactly what is meant by ababil. Some people feel it's one of you get the smaller birds today that are still in that region, but these birds, these ababil, they've released these little pelts. And these pelts now um, result in these elephants disbanding and going awry and then becoming distorted, disheveled, and also left in utter destruction. So that's the main story that we have. Now, some people had thought, so that's one way of people looking at it. Some Mufassirin said, well, um, right, does Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari, for example, in his Urwatul Wuthqa tafsir, he takes a look at saying, well, is it the birds pelting? Because some people said, well, from a point of reason, are these birds pelting elephants to the extent that the elephants are kind of withering away? It doesn't, to them, it didn't seem to be coherent. So they saw, some Mufassirin, they saw this as the verse that says, Tarmihim, that you can see there, verse 4, that says, Tarmihim bihijaratin min sijil. They said this Tarmihim is referring to the you, not to the feminine, because ta in Arabic can refer to either the feminine third person or it can refer to you, the mukhatab, the second person that we're speaking to. So because the verse begins by saying, Alam tara, did you not see how your Lord did this? And according to them, this is a continuation from that tarmihim, and then you, the people of Mecca, catapulted and you threw these kind of rocks at them that disbanded the elephants. So that's how some Mufassirin saw it. So they saw this that tarmihim bihijaratin min sijil. They say that, so people like Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari, he said that, well, Allah arsala alayhim tayran ababil, that these birds flew out, that kind of just, it spooked them, like it came out, like birds came flocking out, like the way you get so many bats come out of a cave, for example, it spooks someone. So that happened as they came towards the Haram, which was then followed by the people, as in Quraysh of Mecca, stoning, that they managed to as projectiles, shoot, not with a gun or a cannon, but using their equipment to pelt at these charging elephants, these large stones that then eventually cause these elephants to scatter. That's a perspective, okay, right. Like I mentioned, many people, the majority, would go with the first way of looking at things. They would say that, look, no, these birds were pelting and they were dropping these pelts, and those pelts destroyed the elephants. So, okay, so you've got two things here. I want to also bring in a third historical perspective, and that is that there are certain historians from the Byzantine history that document Abraha in Arabia. They also document some of his expeditions northbound, where he's trying to he's trying to subdue certain Arab settlements. Now, they do mention some of the regions in their documents where Abraha goes to, but what they don't mention Mecca, but they do mention Ta'if. So they mention he goes north up, and they do mention that he had elephants and he brought some. He had obviously large armies with him, and amongst them many elephants and things. And he tried to subdue any kind of not just rebellions, but any resistance that he was met with. And so they mentioned certain cities he goes to, amongst which is Ta'if, which is not too far from Mecca. I mean, it's not that close, but it's a town that is in a mountainous region that many Meccans had a relationship with, because many of them did, if they did have some land, farming land, agricultural land in Taif, because Mecca was not a place of agriculture. There was no, it was arid, but Taif was mountainous and it did have agricultural soil. So there are several people of Quraysh that had land there that they would grow, harvest on. So, okay, now, so that's interesting. Another interesting point as well to look at this is that Abu Rigal, who is the Judas of this whole story, he is mentioned in Arabian history as being in Jahiliyyah, that they had built a grave for him, where as part of the Hajj ritual, people would stone it. So that's interesting. And another interesting point in this, almost to look at this in a um, almost from the lens of a detective lens, trying to figure out, well, that's interesting. And another interesting point is that Abraha himself would not have had any knowledge of where Mecca was, because which is the mainstream narrative, that he did not know where Mecca is. So when he's subduing these different, or he's facing these different settlements, he says, even in the main traditional narrative, that where is this place Mecca, and he doesn't know, and nobody's showing him except Abu Rigal. So that's another interesting element there. Another interesting point that some Mufassirin do bring, I believe Tabari as well amongst them, is that the birds, now this is interesting, that they cause, because you know where it says فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ, that one of the main, that these birds cause a certain disease, and that is al-Judri, which is smallpox. Now it's like smallpox, and it can affect not just people but also animals as well. Now, what's interesting is one way of that this narrative also comes together is that when Abraha reaches Ta'if, which is documented in other historical sources as well, that he does go to Ta'if. Now, when he goes there, he is told of this place, Mecca, and he does plan. But remember, to get to Taif, the elephants can't go up on the mountains. They have to allow the elephants to set up camp. Now, setting up camp with so many elephants and armies would naturally disrupt whatever wild life that you have there and the natural habitat, because you've got this huge army with so many elephants and horses, and these things are now setting camp here whilst you guys try, you go into this mountainous region. That would naturally create quite a disturbance to the natural habitat, including amongst the birds that are settled. So this is a fascinating point, that whilst Abraha is there, let's say he does plot to go to Mecca, and with this plot of his, which he's thinking, because it's not going to be immediate, like when they travel, they set up in places, they stayed there for days and weeks and then move to another place, that as he's going to do this, because according to the main narrative, he doesn't know where Mecca is, because Mecca was not such a large town. It was a small town, very small, that whilst he's he eventually is guided by someone called Abu Rigal. The person says, I will guide you. So he's making this intention that, yeah, I'm going there, announcing it, I'm going to do this, that it is outside Ta'if that this incident occurs, that these elephants and this settlement, which has disturbed the habitat, resulting in a lot of the birds that use, because one of the things that they did that people have spoken about is the disease Judri having spread in especially even in very early Islam times or pre-Islamic times, and how it was very dangerous. And they would say it was through birds. And often birds, when they're using some of these things to create nests and do stuff, but when disrupted, that they would naturally pelt these things. That it is there at this settlement that these animals, the destruction, the dissolution begins with this infection, this kind of outbreak that happens. And Abraha, as he does decide to go, he doesn't actually make it close to Mecca or anything. As he does decide, maybe it's by Ta'if, this story of meeting the grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, because a lot of people from Mecca had land and they had close connections in Ta'if and would often go there. That this incident, let's say this narrative, is transmitted, if it be true, which is commonly said, although the chain may not be, it may have some questions in it. But this whole thing happens outside Ta'if. And it's there that this whole, as Abraha is considering to move the armies and go, that he finds that this kind of pandemic that has broken out amongst them, that has left them looking like, you see, because when there is a pandemic and there is infectious disease, the imagery is like this eaten crops that you see, parts and parts missing, and that seems to be quite fascinating as a perspective, because it ties into this historical accounts that are being found. It also shows, well, some of the some of the mediums through which this may have happened, how this pelting may have resulted in this kind of outbreak, resulting and the infections in these animals looking in the way they did, like crops that have been. And also, what's fascinating is you find that there are certain narrations, and I'll wrap this on this, that you find certain narrations that you can see here, for example, the qabr of Abu Reghal, that you can see here, that transmitted from بجير بن أبي بجير قال سمعت عبد الله بن عمرو يقول سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول حين خرجنا معه إلى الطائف, when we went with the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, Abdullah ibn Amr is saying that we heard the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم say, when we went with him to Ta'if, فمررنا بقبر, we passed a grave, فقال رسول الله هذا قبر أبي الرغال, this is the qabr of Abu Reghal, وكان بهذا الحرم يدفع عنه فلما خرج أصابته النقمة التي أصابت قومه بهذا المكان فدفن فيه. So you see this narration, which I found very fascinating, that the grave of Abu Reghal is right outside Ta'if, and he's the Judas that agrees to guiding them. And that's fascinating, because it kind of shows, this is interesting. And this perspective, it doesn't really clash with anything, because when you're looking at the surah, it's absolutely saying the same thing. It's not saying anything different. That these people who went there, that when they made this plan, it went to waste, that these birds pelted certain things, and these armies were seen as though they were some kind of the result of some kind of pandemic, some infection, but resulting, appearing as eaten crops. This would also explain why there wasn't really all these bones and things like this. Obviously, over time, things like that could be moved anyway. But I'm just saying, by Mecca, there isn't this finding of Abraha's kind of stuff, let's say, abandoned there, or even archaeologically, because they never actually made it to Mecca, but they did make it to Ta'if. So that's, I think, a fascinating perspective as well. So you have these different ways to look at this surah. So you've got this way, which is the general traditional narrative, which is very common, that he does make it to Mecca, but these birds pelt the elephants, and the elephants are just destroyed by the birds pelting these little stones at them, to another narrative by people like Maulana Abdul Karim al Athari saying, well, it's not actually the birds throwing the stones, but it's Quraysh and people, but the birds flying out is the first verse, and that. And then this narrative, which I find very fascinating, and that actually, when you look at the contemporary historical records, they also document Abraha and his Aksumite kind of expeditions that go towards the northern kingdoms, but they reach Ta'if, and they do show that there was mass movement. They are also historical records of not precisely that time, but other times and around that era of these kind of illnesses and pandemics that did break out. And this narrative of, if there was a settlement of an army of elephants and so many of horses and things that would disrupt the natural habitat, resulting, and with this, them conspiring to attack Mecca, resulting in this pandemic that breaks out between them, between the ranks of these, of what he has, resulting in this disease, that they don't actually make it to Mecca. They are in dissolution, in Arai, and maybe some of them make it back, some of them probably die. And that's where we find the qabr of Abu Rikhal. That all said, the main purpose of Surah Al-Fil is still, it is not a historical lesson, as in to teach us history. It is a lesson of fortitude in the face of unfathomable crises. And may Allah give us all strength. Ameen. I hope that's of some help. Right. Let's take a look at some. Did Abraham build? Oh, Abraham. I thought that's pandemic. Yeah. One of corona proportions, shall we say. Right. Okay. Let's see the super chat. Ibn Tashfin, much love for the super chat. Is man capable of loving God unconditionally? Well, I think man, I'm using in the non-binary sense. So man's relationship with love is a lifelong affair of discovery. So when you say, is man capable of loving God, is man capable of loving, is the first part of that question. And that in itself will answer the rest of your question. And is man capable of loving unconditionally? And maybe after, and is that not a journey unto itself? Kya baat hai, kya baat. Right, so let's take a look at if there's any questions, and I'll move on to what I want to speak about. Right, driving home from work, didn't know you were live. Alama Lonzetta, of course, yeah. Claro que sí, por supuesto, hermano, por supuesto. Estoy aquí. Right, so, right now, Okay, guys, I want to share some thoughts. Let me just ah, not quite the same now. It's she had some chai latte. Huh? Kya baat hai yaar? Yeah, let me just get a tissue. One second. Let me bring up what I want to speak about, which is parasocial relationships. Okay, let me bring that up. One second. All right. So, parasocial relationships, people. This is a fascinating theme. Okay, I thought let's share a few words on this. Now, I put that up there for you guys to take a look at. That what is it? What does it refer to? And what does psychology have to say about it? So you had these two researchers and psychiatrists from the 50s, actually, Donald Horton and Richard Wall, who wrote a paper back then in 1956 about this, the parasocial interaction. And parasocial relationships are fascinating, actually. They are, in essence, they are what we, and they were writing about this in the 50s. Check that out. That's just madness. They observed that people develop an intimate relationship with, in their time, people via radio or some limited access of TV, for example, or movies, whereby people feel that they have an actual relationship with these people. And they don't mean by an actual relationship in the sense that they don't think, oh, I'm married to such and such, or that person lives in my house and lives in my. They don't think like that. So, but exposure to whether it's celebrities or nowadays, especially people on social media, they may be content creators, they may be uh, politicians, they may be actors, they may be singers, musicians, comedians, just people with opinions. They may be teachers, people like me are sitting on here teaching. What happens is, see, this is really fascinating. Okay, pause this for a moment. To understand it, we've got to understand the human brain. The human brain, as a core part of its survival, it's kind of its survival tactics or strengths, survival strengths, is that it incorporates others into its worldview by means of value. And it's necessary to do this for us to become a team, or for us to work together, for us to just hold some value in life for the other person. So you make friends with someone, you're like, oh my God, and that's such an amazing, oh my God, really value this friendship. And you see kids get really excited about friends, and that's because it's very full of energy at that young age. And as people mature, they try to control certain emotions and they learn to handle things. But as kids, these are so raw, these expressions. Kids are so excited. I can't wait to see my friend. I can't wait to. And that friend has an important part in their existence. So they introject the person into their worldview. So they say, well, oh, this person's like this is his story, this is who he lives with, these are his parents, these are. So it's very important. Now, being able to do this is necessary in boosting our survival, really, as a person, and by extension as a species. It's necessary as a social clique that we have the ability to do this. This kind of um, this kind of friend glue that we have, it is necessary for us to survive. Because if we didn't have that, other people who did have that would definitely overcome you. Like, you can see how amazing that would be as a survival strength. So, okay, now let's come back to this point. Now, in this day and age, social media is really fascinating, because what happens is it gives you access to countless individuals and their lives, or at least what they want to show of their lives. Like, maybe people don't show so many things of their life, but what they choose to show. And what you find is, if you watch someone, especially where they are reasonably natural. So let's say you watched a movie, it may not happen as easily, because in a movie, it depends on the character the person is playing. But we can often tell that's a movie. Or let's say I watch somebody sing songs all the time, and every time you watch them, they're singing songs. That may not work as easily. But if you watched people being natural, just normal, like they're just sitting down, just having a drink, just cracking a joke, smiling, talking, the mind cannot distinguish between the virtual and the real. Okay, don't think, the mind is seriously can't. There's a lot of experiments where you'll get people who they will see, let's say, social media, like video clips of, or even pictures on some occasions, but especially videos because they're moving and more real lifelike, of people that are deemed to be attractive to the subject. So let's say the person thinks, oh, they're deemed to be cute and attractive. Where they will, in the clip, that person will smile or give them a kind of, let's say, a flirtatious look towards the camera, or smile in that kind of, that a bit of that nutty kind of look to the camera. Naturally, the person that is looking into this screen will react by smiling. And they've done many experiments like this. People will just, so what happens is you will naturally smile when you see somebody, because even though it's a screen, but the mind can't in the moment distinguish between real and what isn't real. That's why people, for example, when they're watching a movie, they'll start crying. It's not that they don't know this is a movie. Let's say it's really emotional, or they'll get scared. It's not that they don't know they're sitting in a cinema or they're sitting in front of a TV, but in the moment, the mind can't distinguish. Same thing with porn. Why it works? Because the mind can't distinguish between the real and what isn't real, even though the person may know it isn't real. So the emotional scene they're watching in a movie, in a drama, or the horror, the scare, or these things, the sexual excitement when people are watching porn or different things, the reason they are working on the brain in the same way as something real is because in that moment, distinguishing is very difficult. The mind sees it as real. So even though the prefrontal cortex knows that it isn't real, but in the moment it perceives it as real. So now when you watch someone, coming back to parasocial relationships, when you watch someone, especially being let's somewhat normal, like they're sitting, they're talking, they're cracking jokes, maybe they're laughing, doing something, or as people, they vlog nowadays. Let's say they're vlogging, hey, I'm going for a walk and I'm taking my dog on a walk, or here I am in my house, and hey, I'm with this person, hey, I'm going to the cafe now, hey, I'm doing this. And so what happens is you get these windows into these people's, these kind of intimate windows into a person's life, to the extent that you feel that by the end of it, that you know this person like a friend. It's like the mind catches on to that friend function that it has, because the only time you would have that much exposure with someone at that intimate level is if they were a friend. So now that this happens in your mind, even though you know, like you may think, like, it's not that you would say, maybe some people would, but let's say they follow some celebrities or stars or people from social media. It's not necessary that they would think that, oh, if somebody asked them, is that person your friend? But in their mind, it's difficult for it to distinguish. It assumes that they're a part of it. And this can happen by even things like TV series. You can watch a TV series. I bet many of us may have watched a TV series that was so long that by the end of it, you felt that you were a part of the of the whole setup. It's crazy. It's like when it finishes, you're left kind of with a void, and you're left feeling a bit weird because your mind set up a reality. And when that TV series stops after, let's say, 6 or 8 seasons, you feel like, but the mind's like, where did that go? So these are things to become really to heighten our awareness of, because parasocial relationships, right, they are becoming more and more commonplace, but just because of social media and what we have access to. Now, are these things good? So they can have many, they can have strengths to them. So for example, a person, they could be inspired by these people, and maybe the normal friends around them wouldn't inspire them. So now they watch someone and they think, they say that you're the average of the 5 friends that you have. You're like the average of them. So maybe a lot of the friends some people have are, are also redundant. Like they're not doing anything in life, and they're not, and they're just people just aim so low in life. So maybe they follow someone that online, or they follow an artist, or they follow a book writer, or they follow a singer, or they follow somebody or they follow a teacher, or they follow people, they listen to Islamic stuff, let's say, or they learn, or not. Maybe that person inspires them, so they improve their life by it. What can also happen, sometimes people can set that as a virtual kind of higher ego of to hold themselves accountable to. Weirdly enough, now that may sound crazy, but people do it. Like they might think, oh, I wouldn't want to, like, weirdly, like let's say they motivate, I'm going to be successful, like they listen to this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to set this up, and somehow they feel that it's almost as though they want that person to be proud of them, and they don't want to disappoint that person, as weird as that sounds, but that actually does happen. And in that sense, even if it's false, it still can be very, when I say false, because the relationships in real life, the other person sometimes doesn't even know that they exist. And that's where it gets a bit bizarre, because now, you see, it depends, because, well, maybe you can go online and interact nowadays with celebrities and people, and you write messages and you follow them, and that's all great. But then they have to remember that really the other person doesn't really know them. They don't truly, I mean, generally speaking, these people on social media, they wouldn't know the people that follow them. Maybe they've seen a message, or they haven't and seen a comment, but they wouldn't really know. So it's all really a one-way relationship. So that's, by the way, that's where they get cognitive dissonance. That's why these scandals become so huge, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's not how I knew this person. So they find this celebrity that's, there was something on social media about some American co-hosts that present a morning program that have now been sacked because they both are in a romantic relationship with each other. I mean, they were married, but they are now in a romantic relationship with each other. So this got exposed, and now they got sacked. Now somebody may say, well, what's, okay, but that's their private business. Sure, if they, let's say they fell into a romantic relationship, and sure, whether it's good or bad, but why does it make a difference if they are a morning host for a good morning show, whatever it is? Because the issue is, you see, that's not what these people have, because in their image of this person, it's what they've built up. Oh, this person is like this. Oh, this person is like, oh my God, the person. Now, all of a sudden, they do something that doesn't fit that story, and it creates in people an irrational reaction. Like, oh, it's really weird, but it does. And this is because the initial thing wasn't true. Like, if you think about it, people who follow those celebrities, those co-hosts, they didn't really know them. They just know what people present about you. Anybody that's on social media presenting something, remember, they only present what they want to present. Sure, maybe some people present everything, but most people will only present what they want to present. I mean, I've been on social media for years. When I sit to do my live streams or teach or to do whatever I'm doing, remember, people are only sharing what we want to share. If there's something I didn't want to share, I wouldn't share it. It doesn't matter whether people want. So there will always be there will always be things that are, so our perspectives will always be skewed. So it can have some strengths, it can inspire us, it can do things, it can have some issues, like, for example, if people become obsessed, people become fixated, if people have false expectations, if people become deluded almost. It's crazy. I was watching this thing on, there's a social media, and now you have a few of them. This celebrity, what was her name? There was this program mentioning her, Lil Makilai, but anyway, this female celebrity, and she sings and does all these things online, and she had about 3 million followers. I think it was on Instagram, or was it TikTok? I think Instagram. Except she's AI. She doesn't exist. She's artificial intelligence. She actually doesn't exist. She's just like conjured up by AI. And that's just mad. Like, so that's crazy. I mean, it's like, whoa, okay. So the person isn't even real. So that's, so this is interesting, definitely. So the more we become aware of these, what we want to also focus is on real relationships in real life. Use the strengths. Don't get, if you find yourself getting too fixated, especially where they're fictitious characters. It's like kids having imaginary friends, and now adults have got imaginary friends. But especially if it's somebody that isn't even real, or if somebody's in love with a movie character or a TV character, now that's just fictitious. Even the person playing him or her is not him or her. So that is quite delusional, okay, and could have a lot of harms. But okay, if they're real people and somebody follows them, and that's good, and maybe if they're using them for inspiration, that's wonderful. And but at the same time, also use some of that energy in our real world, build relationships. invest in real relationships as well. And that's obviously, and to be fair, to some extent, social media has made some people quite accessible, and that's actually wonderful as well. I tell you, I seriously, like, I think now, like, think of this Patreon thing. This is amazing. Just this week, yeah. So one of my Patreons that I have, so we have these one-to-one sessions. So one of them, this person from America, yeah, like, we discussed. I mean, this week, it was just wow. Like, honestly, like, since we sat into, so it's like an hour session, yeah, and we the person had certain points of, I want to discuss these things beforehand, and let me know. And they were on things like identity, the ontology of religion, Muslim politics. Why does the for example, the populist, why are certain people drawn, why are the more people drawn to a da'wah, the kind of street da'wah that you see, than they are to more intellectual discourses? Then discussing things like, let's say, details on how do people perceive religion, what about the historical links that we're seeing between certain, but it was just like just a rich wow, like it's like just coffee, talk, and the hour was up here. Now, to be fair, something like that is actually very meaningful, because in a way, I wish, honestly, I was thinking about this because, afterwards we were talking on some points, and I said that I'm going to speak about some of these points on my meaning with MALM as well. But I was thinking, I wish before, when I was learning, or just earlier in life, I wish I had, back then, we had access like this. Because think about it. How many friends of yours do you actually, even, let's say, once a month for a whole hour, actually go into deep discourse and discussions with? Many people, if they're lucky, they probably get to, maybe there's one or two friends that they in a month get to meet like that, with deep, like, meaty discussions. And yeah, like that's honestly, I was thinking to myself that that's just wow. It is something, like, I would love to, even now, I would love to be able to do it with certain people, but they just don't host these kind of, they're not on these kind of platforms to be available like that. But I would love to be able to just pick their brains for like a whole, like, just obviously in with that, obviously the one-to-one experience. But yeah, so coming back to this, it is important, I think, especially with more younger people, to become aware of these parasocial um, relationships, and just not that, if we can channel them towards more khair and positivity, inspiration, motivation, use some of the energy and feed it back into our real lives, in real relationships. And keeping in mind as well that these relationships that we have online are not, they're not the, like, there's an element to them that is not real life. Okay. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say now, people, I speak to people, this is actually a good one. This is quite relevant and not so long ago as well. Like, I was speaking to this person, speaking to me, and is messaging me, and when he's messaging me like we're absolute buddies and we hang out. Like, but we don't, though. I mean, I don't know. Okay, like, I've seen some messages, but they're like, yeah, Mufti and this, and then c- not just cracking jokes, but like I give you an example. I was a bit poorly, and um I wasn't feeling well. In fact, it took me a while to shake this bloody flu cold off. And this person said to me, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And that's a nice question. I said, "Alhamdulillah, Allah be praised." I said, "I'm a bit, under the weather and stuff." And the person said, "Ah, what's wrong with you? You're always getting ill, ain't you? Ha ha ha! Like you didn't." And I was, I found that quite rude. Like I was like, "Excuse me." Like, who are you talking to? Like, I don't know. But that's a clear example of, uh, you see, this kind of parasocial relationship, because he's obviously seeing me often, and maybe I'm laughing and doing things, and he's assuming that this is like a bi-directional. That said, to be honest, I thought it was a bit rude anyway, because I wouldn't really even speak like that to my mates, and so I immediately blocked him. Of course, I blocked him. I was like, "Sorry, who do you think you're talking to, mate?" I said that. So I just block. But that is also an instantiation of this parasocial relationship issue, where it becomes an issue where you don't, the propriety, the boundaries are blurred, because you assume, just because that person seems so familiar to you, that you are familiar to them, which isn't necessarily in that way. But yeah, guys, I want to share some of that. I hope it's of some help. Let's move on. All right. Somebody said you blocked a tear. Yeah, well, that's exactly. You see, now there you go. Now that may surprise someone. Somebody may say, I never thought you were like that, but that just goes to show, you see, that how do we know people? We know people from what we see of them. And then if you see one thing that you didn't assume, it surprises you. Let's move on to the next part. All right, which is more interesting, people. Strength in stories. First of all, I see Saracen. How do you view the culture war in the US, i.e., the woke left versus the alt right? Provide a solution to these polarized Americans. Shukran. First of all, much love for the super chat, I see Saracen. Allah bless you. Shukran. And I don't think Islam is going to provide a solution in the sense to the left versus right uh, kind of culture war. I think people, wherever in fact, that was actually one of the key things we discussed, in this, what I was discussing, with my Patreon this week. That was actually one of the key things, because I said, look, you've got to understand how populism works, that this is regardless of what people believe in. If you make a people more insecure, like let's say you could scale how insecure you're feeling right now, how safe, how vulnerable you're feeling. Let's say you're feeling just average, you're not feeling vulnerable, or you're okay, you're okay. Now, if we manipulated the circumstances to make you feel more vulnerable, slightly on this scale, so to say, that it went up a point or two, your views will lean more right, whatever right means in your context. And the more secure you feel, your views will lean center and left. That's not to speak. I'm not speaking about the militant left, by the way, the kind of fascist left, ultra woke kind of these people. I'm speaking about just generally views, and that's fascinating. All we need to do is manipulate how secure, insecure, safe, vulnerable you feel. So, for example, Brexit was happening. They start speaking about migrants, start speaking about immigrants, start showing videos of some people, let's say from Europeans in the UK, or immigrants robbing people, go viral, snatching purses, doing this. Even if it's not you, if you're watching a video where somebody is getting robbed and it's not you, but I told you earlier on, the mind can't distinguish between real and virtual. So naturally also gets apprehensive. So if I put you in an apprehensive state, you automatically lean right. So that's psychology shows that. So it's amazing. All you do is you freak people out and you get Brexit. You see, you got Donald Trump that way. You freak people out. Oh, these Mexicans, these, this is happening. He comes in, throws all this stuff, populist stuff. People, same thing with BJP in India. You see, this is how populism works. So I don't think people, and Islam is very broad, that people can lean right in Islam, they can lean left in Islam, they can be centered, they can. Islam has it's huge, you know, as an amazing diversity. So you'll find people in America that are quite lean right, but they're Muslims, and you'll find people that lean left and they're Muslims. So Islam, it's not Islam. Islam, it's like water. It will just flow where you are. I hope that helps. Yeah. Amal, I agree. That is a root. Allah, Allah. See, I had to show your comment on the Amal doing it. Right. Cool Khan. Cool Khan. What a name, yeah. Get a hint of parasocial relationship affected people here by their profile pictures. Okay, I don't know, but possibly, yeah, sure. If people, you know, if people, yeah, sure. Right, guys, you know what? Yep, Scorpio saying sometimes those dear admirers get crazy. Yeah, people do. I mean, you know what? It's the way of the world, huh? The way of the world. Allahu Akbar. You know, it is love people show, but obviously there are propriety issues. You know, you have to value people's time as well. You have to value people. You know, people can't just give you all the time that they have their own life to live. You know, it's like people will ask me sometimes, well, explain this to me. Oh, I want detail. I want to explain this. You know, why are you a Mufti then? Cha cha cha. That's why I became a Mufti, to explain it to you. Cha cha cha. That too in a detailed. You know, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. Fun and games. But it is, you know, sometimes I'll tell you something. It is amazing to at least have as some friends to be able to liaise with that are definitely make you feel like the stupid person in that conversation. If not, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. That what I mean by that is that that's how intelligent they are compared to, because it really raises your level. Honestly, I love the opportunities when I get when I get a chance like that. Honestly, recently I had Dr. Professor Faisal Mir from Canada. He stopped by, came to visit me. Allah bless him. I always love the conversations with him. He's a prime example. It's like whoo, whoo, whoo. Oh man, I feel so stupid in some of those conversations. I'm like, I feel like a caveman, like, what? Like, and it'll be so obvious to him. And it's like, oh, but don't you get it? It's like a hypothesis, and I'm like, what the hell? What language is that? I don't know. But it's it is amazing, honestly. It is. It really raises you as an individual. So do try to do that, expand your circles wherever you are. Right. Right. Mufti, I'm from Kashmir. Much love. Allah bless you, and may Allah bless Kashmir and its people and grant him ease. You know, वैसे तो हम भी कश्मीर से हैं. You know, we're also Kashmiri, but you guys are the real Kashmiri. हम तो ऐसे ही, you know, as we say, eme. We're just, our Kashmiri is like, it's like an eme Kashmiri. It's not, this is, Azad Kashmir, the Pakistan side. That side, I guess, the Wadi, the valley of Kashmir. That's the real kind of Kashmir. Right, people, let's go to a story. Right. Let me just bring this up 1 second. Guys, what better than a story? People speak of heroic epics, of accomplishments, of battles, tragedies, victory. I want to speak about an event, a battle known as the Ma'arikatu Zhi-Qaar, or the battle of the day of Zhi-Qaar. But it's not just the battle that is the thing, but it's the whole backdrop to it. Okay. It involves the tragic fall of a king, the demise of a king. It involves the beauty, the irresistible beauty of a woman. It involves the valor and the tenacious courage of another woman. It involves the coalition of adversaries to allies. And it demonstrates the rise of the weak and the fall of the mighty. Allah. People, Yawmu Zhi-Qaar. وَمَا أَدْرَاكُمْ مَا يَوْمُ Zhi-Qaar. Allah, Allah, Allah. Let's go to this, people. Let's go to this story, man. Story time. So, this incident, this epic that we're speaking about, is in the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is further north. It is in Iraq, and it's to do with the Sassanid Empire. Kisra, the famous Persian king, the Khusro of his time, and it was Parvez. His name was Parvez. So, and some people say this was a year after the Prophet having received prophethood. And some people said this battle, this whole incident was with the migration of the Prophet into Medina. And some said it was a few months after the Battle of Badr. I don't think it was after the Battle of Badr or anything, but people have said these things, and they've transmitted allegedly a hadith of the Prophet in relation to this, saying that this was the day that the Arabs rose against the Sassanids and attained justice. هذا يوم انتصفت فيه العرب على العجم. Allah, ومن العجم. But so what was going on, people? What was going on? Right. We've got to understand. I've spoken to you before many a times about the cultural capital in the north main Arabian kingdom, which is modern-day Iraq, and the city of Hira. Hira was the cultural capital, and a lot of the Jahili poets were either from there or used to go there as well. And their last popular king that everybody's heard of is Nu'man ibn al-Munzir, and I've spoken about him so many stories before. And he's the one that I may have told you, he was this, I think he was the 18th of the Lakhmid kings, and he used to have this Yom Bu's or Yom Na'im, Chaudhry Sahab, Yom Bu's, Yom Na'im. He used to have this thing that today's my day that I'm basically bus, like, oh, you don't want to see me on today's like my day of, today's a day of misery, and Yom Na'im, today's a day of bliss. And he would have these days. So anybody that he met on Yom Bus, he would just kill them. Doesn't he have anything else to do? He's like, I know, I'll just kill them. And anybody he met on his Yom Na'im, he'd be like, oh yeah, he would if they were in trouble, he would let them off. If they came for something, he would grant it. So yeah, as Mark said, the goblin mode. He would go goblin mode on Yomu Bus, and he would be like angelic mode on Yom Na'im. He'd be like, it's Yom Na'im. And this was Nu'man ibn al-Munthir, and he's well known king of the Lakhmids. So, right, it's in his time that, and he is a vassal for the great Persian Empire, the Sassanids. Lucy Jones just said, did he have bipolar? He definitely had. It'd be amazing to do like a psychoanalysis, like evaluate these people, psychologize their disorders. Definitely bipolar at the very least. Can you imagine? Or maybe like schizophrenia. Maybe some of them had these multiple identities, or manic kind of depressive. But so he was a vassal. So just a side note, that you had the two major empires here. You've got let's say you've got the Byzantines, Rome, Eastern Rome, and you've got the Sassanids, the Persians, who rule 1,000 kingdoms and blah blah blah. So they quite intelligently actually keep a no man's land territory between them, because obviously if you're bordering each other, then there's going to be an outbreak of war. So better than that, you allow these tribes to rule the neighboring the kind of no man's land in between. So when there's an outbreak, it's between them, but it doesn't reach. It's like a proxy war. It's very intelligent. Now, the Arab tribes that you had there had the allegiances. So you had the Byzantine allied Arab tribes known as the Ghassanids. And then you had the Sassanid allied tribes known as the Lakhmids or the Manadhira. They call them Manadhira as well because so many of them were called Munthir. But the Lakhmid was their tribe. And these two were always at it with each other. And they were all Arabs, and many of them were Christian. Even though the Sassanids were Zoroastrians and stuff, but the Arabs were mainly just Christians, and all of them, and the Byzantines were Christians as well. So, okay, now that we know that, right, now, people, we have to picture ourselves in the courtroom, in the presence of the great Kisra and the king of kings, as he would say, Shahin Shah. रिश्ते में, the Amitabh Bachchan's dialogue, रिश्ते में हम तुम्हारे बाप लगते हैं, नाम है शाहिन शाह. Allah. I don't know if you guys remember that movie from when we were kids. So Shahin Shah means the king of kings. So he's sitting there one day, and the topic arises about beauty of women, as it does in many great gatherings you can imagine throughout history, human history. So Kisra says, the most beautiful. Who can name some? I'm sure I've got in my royal palace the most beautiful women, and baatein chal rahi hai, baatein. So here there isn't. We have to introduce a character introduction, yeah. So here is Zayd ibn Uday, who is an Arab. He says, "Oh, Milord." He says, you do have very beautiful women here, unquestionably, but some of the most beautiful, if there was ever a woman that was so irresistibly, shockingly, devastatingly beautiful, it is Hind bint Nu'man, Hind, the daughter of Nu'man, who was called, people would call her Hurqa. Hurqa. Hurqa is also Arabic for like heartburn. So Bechari would just melt the heart, should cause heartburn. So Hurqa or Hind, he says, Toba, Toba, Toba. He says, the bari muh chot, what is it? Chota muh bari baat. The not eligible to say, but I say, He says, oh, oof, Hind bint Nu'man, oof. He does the Toba, Toba, Toba. Kisra goes, Acha. He does the, Acha. Aisi baat. So he says, send a proposal. Okay, we've got to pause the story here. Pause it, man. Pause it, move it to a side. Why did Zayd ibn Uday say this? Yaar, ye ho ka raha hai. Why is he saying this? There's a backstory to it. Samjha karo. Right, so the backstory to this is we've got to pause the story. We've got to backtrack a few decades. Zayd ibn Uday, who is a diplomat for foreign affairs between the Lakhmid dynasty, and he's somebody who's grown up, he's like a foster kid of Nu'man. I say foster, not really his foster kid, but he's grown up in his palace. Why? Because his father, Uday, was a close friend of Nu'man and even helped him at one point become king, but then was later betrayed by Nu'man and murdered. Murder. Ho gaya yaar. See, now, so Nu'man murdered Uday, who was a close friend, murdered him. Murder ho gaya yaar. And then afterwards he felt bad about it. So to make up for it, he thought, what I'll do is I will, I'll raise his kid with all the luxuries as though he's my own kid, like that. So he took up Zayd ibn Uday and, had him live with him in the palace and fostered him. But Zayd wasn't like he wasn't a toddler or something. He was a young kid, like, so he's probably around 10 or something. But he knew that he'd murdered my dad. So, but obviously Nu'man, maybe he was having one of his Yom Na'im, his manic happy days. And he thought maybe he was going by the understanding, Hal jaza'ul ihsani illa al-ihsan, that if I do ihsan to this guy, he will do ihsan to me. Yeah. But what does Antara say? Antara, from that era, Jahiliyyah. Antara, the great, we've covered him in the stories before. He says, Inna al-afa'i wa in lanat malamisuha عند التقلب في أنيابها العطب. Allah. He says that, you see, the problem with snakes, he says, even if their skin is smooth, that when they turn on you, in their venom lies your destruction. Wow. إن العفاعي وإن لانت ملامسها عند التقلب في أنيابها العطب. There's in fact, in line with that, there's an Urdu one that, what is it, that प्यार लाख पढ़ लो प्यार के मंतर साजिद, जिनकी फितरत में हो डसना वो डसा करते हैं. Allah, Ataullah says, he reads that in one of his ghazals. Right, so, okay. Now, Zayd ibn Uday, although he he was obviously at face value on good terms with Nu'man, and he knew Farsi, by the way. And there's a whole backstory to that because his father knew Persian and he knew it, he studied it, and he later on took up these diplomatic roles. But now you fast forward, he's in the court of Nu'man, of Kisra. Now, why he's mentioning about Hind? You see, there's a provocation here. Hind was actually incredibly beautiful, and they did used to call her Hurqa, but him mentioning this, there was malice to it. So Kisra sends a proposal. He says, "Ah, yaar, propose. Send a proposal to Nu'man. Say, I want to marry his daughter." So now Zayd comes back as the kind of the in-between ambassador, and he brings with him a Persian minister. And so he tells him that, oh, by the way, this is what he's sent a proposal. So Nu'man he's kind of angered by this. And he says that does he not find people in Iraq, in the Sassanid Empire, who are sufficient for him? Does he not find from the Persians? And then he says that, look, we don't marry outside of the Arab clans. Now, the Farsi minister doesn't understand Arabic, or he understands some, but he doesn't understand some of the words. So he asks him, what did he just say? Because he uses a word. He says, Alam yajid fi sawad al-Iraq wa mahal Iraq. He uses these words maha and sawad. Sawad means the black, but it's used to mean the populace, the majority of, the crowds of. So when he asks Zayd, what did he mean by this? Zayd translates it that he said it means by cows. This is the sting coming in now, the venom. He says he said, so he translates, Alam yajid fi baqar al-Iraq man yakfi. Doesn't he find from the cows in Iraq a female cow that is sufficient for him, that he has to look at the Arabs? So the minister's like, acha. So now, obviously, this gets back to Kisra, Shahanshah, king of kings. You can imagine, ruler of 1,000 empires. He is shocked. He's dumbfounded that how dare Nu'man say this? He says, he summons him. He better come here or I'm going to, he says, he better come here. That's what I'm saying. He better come here now. So Nu'man realizes when he gets the summon that, damn, this line, no good. This isn't going to end well. So first of all, he's worried about his family. He's worried about, he has all this, because he was a king, he had all this weaponry as well. He didn't want it. He was worried about his wealth as well. Priorities. So first he goes asking some people for if they can offer him protection, and they say, look, you're joking, we can't, it's not going to happen. And they say, look, you might as well just go to Kisra and just apologize or whatever. And he's like, no. So he's going about, he's trying. Then here we introduce the tribe of Banu Shayban. And these are a tribe of Bakr, which we've spoken about before, which are part of Rabi'a. We've spoken about these before when we've spoken about the great wars of Taghlib and Bakr and all of these in the stories. So there is this tribe known as the Shaybani tribe, Banu Shayban. And there is a guy there called Hani ibn Mas'ud. But if you want to remember him, better Hani Shaybani. Hani Shaybani. Hani Shaybani was a man of his word and character. So Nu'man goes to him, says, look, I've got these issues. And he says, look, what I can do for you, he says, if you want to go fight, I will fight with you. But we can't, he says, what I can do is, if you are worried about who will take care of your family, who will take it, you can entrust them to me. I'm respectable within my tribe. we will take care of your daughters, of your, of this wealth or weaponry that you want to leave behind, leave it safe. He says, yeah, we'll take care of that. So they do. Now, Hani Shaybani takes care of that. And Hani Shaybani has a daughter who is known, and she's a central character in this whole story. Her name is Safiya Shaybaniya. And they also called her Hajija. Hajija, which meant like the argumentative, but here it doesn't mean argumentative like the compelling one, because she was this woman that she was a young, very kind of rising female character in the tribe. I mean, she was young, she wasn't like an old woman, but she was a poetess, she was very charismatic. She was somebody that the whole tribe respected. She was somebody who always gave her opinion on matters, and people would seek her opinion and counsel. This also counters this narrative that, the Islam, it came in this backdrop where people looked down on women and they didn't have. That's not true. Like these incidents are clearly reflective of that. Like Safiya Shaybaniya is like a clear example of this woman who is not only very charismatic, charming, but has an incredible voice and uses it. Right. So uses it as well. So right. So she is there now. When her father, her father brings in, he says, look, fine, Nu'man's going to entrust his family folk here, he's going to entrust his weaponry, and he's got all this armor and swords, and we're going to take care of it. Okay, cool. Nu'man in this time heads off to see Kisra. But as you can imagine, that isn't going to end well. Okay. So as soon as he got there, there's different varying reports. Some claim that he had Nu'man. He obviously, the moment he got his hands on him, he had him first of all locked up and then trampled over by elephants. That was actually one of the common ways of a method of execution. I mean, what a horrible inna lillahi. People, these sadists, like, the pleasure that they get in what they, ya salam. So he has Nu'man executed, and here they send a message to hunt down Hurqa, the daughter, because Kisra wants her. He's like, this all began because of this. He's like, Hurqa kya hai yaar? All this began because of Hurqa. So I need to see who this Hurqa is. So he sends a message. Now, obviously, people are the Arab tribes. He's got people, spies within different Arab tribes that suck up to him. He's the Shahanshah. So some of them do suck up to him, and they do their research, and they say, well, she's hiding in Banu Shayban, which are part of Rabi'a. Rabi'a are like a solid, part of Bakr. Bakr ibn Wa'il are like a solid fighter tribe. So what? I mean, they're nothing compared to the great Shahanshah's army. So when he sends a message at this point, Hurqa seeks refuge. Like she's already staying with Shayban, but she seeks like solemn protection. Like, I want your word. And she goes to no other than Safiya Shaybaniya. And you see here the role of women, that she says to Safiya Shaybaniya that you give me your word that I'm protected. And she says, you are. She says, no, give me your word. And she says, I give you my word. Huh? Word de diya yaar. What? Take it, man. Take it. So here, Safiya Shaybaniya goes in her tribe and says it, that I have given her, قَدْ أَجَرْتُهَا إِسْتِجَارَتْنِي وَأَجَرْتُهَا. I have given her protection. Now, this goes to show how the tribes valued her opinion as a woman. So look, this once again debunking this myth that these women were, oh, and I'm not saying, sure, it doesn't mean, maybe there were certain occasions that, you may get reports of some women being silenced or people weren't seeking the opinions of someone, but it was not that that was the rule. It may happen, but it still happens in all places, in all times. But it doesn't mean that all Arabs in that time that where Islam came were like this. So she offers this protection. Meanwhile, people, what happens is Kisra replaces, obviously, Nu'man with a new king known as Iyas ibn Qabisa al-Ta'i, who will later end up facing the wrath of the Muslim armies in the years to come. I believe as well Khalid bin Walid. I believe I believe he legs it and runs when Khalid bin Walid comes over a decade and so later. But at this stage where we are, he goes to Hira. Meanwhile, Kisra sends out this other. He sends an Arab to this tribe known as Mansur with quite an army with him coming. Now, Banu Shayban find out, and some of them are like, uh-oh. But Safiya, she says, look, I've given my word, and we are going to stand true to it. So what follows is this really heated battle. She squares off to Mansur. She tells Mansur that you should be ashamed of yourself coming here to take a woman. Like, where is, and Mansur says, he sends a message. The armies they would send, like, before they attack, they would send this kind of message. He says, look, just send her, and she's not your problem, and blah blah blah. But they stand true to their word. This is not the battle, by the way, but this is of the Zhi-Qaar, but this is because it's a series of battles that result in that. But this is the kind of the beginning of this war to come. So in this battle, Safiya, who's incredibly eloquent, she rallies not just Shayban but the other tribes, some of them, and saying, look, these people have come into our territory, we need to stand. And she manages to get some of these, and they put up a heroic, courageous resistance, and they actually not only resist but successfully triumph over this Mansur's army that he had brought. And obviously it's a victorious day, everybody's happy. Hurqa obviously is safe, but Safiya is also dignified that her people stood up for her, respected her word. Mansur's army it's defeated. This news gets back to Kisra. He's not happy, man. I thought, Magambo khush nahi hua. It's like, Apun to Shahanshah hai yaar. I am the Shahanshah, man. So he says, Puttar, just you wait, man. Just you wait. So he says, assemble the armies. So what happens is a ridiculous number of the armies are gathered and set off towards the settlement of where these Arabs, kind of where they begin. Now, before going off to these settlements, Kisra seeks advice from different Arabs. He says, how do you give me your advice? Where should we crush them? So one of them says that, they have a day in the year where they come to this place, and it's this arid land, and it's called Zhi-Qaar because of almost like the tar that is there. And I do wonder if some of this tar was like maybe like fuel, because this is Iraq is incredibly rich in petroleum and all these oil, and I feel maybe this tar that they were saying that would cover some of the land there, that whether this was, natural fuel. So whether it was oil or petroleum or these kind of things from the earth that had kind of flooded out at that time. Allahu A'lam. But they say there was this region where this tribe would come in a certain season of the year, because they would go there, not in that region, but off to it. There was a certain, they would gather there, they would have a ritual, and there was some water they would collect and things and take it. And there were certain other things, and they would take it back to their. So the person says to Kisra, why don't you attack them at that point? Because they're going to be helpless. So, okay, cool. He says, point, AR, point. I must, man. I must. So, okay, Kisra assembles an army. And they say his army was so huge. And this was known about the Persian Empire, that they say they would block out the sun. This is how huge they were. It's like bloody, ridiculous kind of numbers. So now what happens is somebody gets the message to Safia. She gets the message, and her dad, Hani Shaybani. What a cool name, huh? Hani Shaybani. So they find out, damn. But here they have a choice. Do we stand true to our word? Or do we just like give up hurqa and, say, hey, we got nothing to do with this and this ain't our fight? But they say that, look, we're going to stand true to our word. And Hani Shaybani says, I promised her dad that I will take care of his family. And here Safia says, I gave my word. Like father, like daughter, huh? She says, I gave my word as well. So they say, look, this is going to be a tough one, because they're going to assemble the armies. So Hani Shaybani has Norman's weaponry, which was already entrusted to him. So he gives this to a bunch of, whoever is happy to fight with him. So they've got armor, body armor, swords, things like that, spears, other things, shields. He manages to get the tribes around him to coalesce. There's the Ajal, Bani Ajal, there's Bani al-Abs. They get other kind of tribes from Bani Bakr to kind of join in. They get, and a lot of this is done by none other than Safia. She goes there, she recites poetry, she's a poetess. She says to them, because some of the tribes were not prepared to do it. And she says that, look, she says that if this is like an embarrassment, this is our honor. So a few tribes agree, but they're still not fully on board at this stage. There are several, but not the whole of that Bani Bakr, for example. They're not, or some are saying it's not our fight. Now, as the season mandated, people go to that Zhi-Qaar place. Now they turn up there, but they're going to this other place. And what do you know? Kisra has sent at the vanguard his armies. Okay, so there's so many, they're coming from behind yet. This is just the vanguard of the army. And they have a fierce, relentless kind of battle breaks out. And what's incredible is to raise the morale of the people. Safia fights in the front lines. And just to raise them, because people were backing off. And so this is how the first day of the battle goes. Because first day, it looks like, oh my God, what's going on? We've got these numbers just keep coming, because more and more armies are joining. And there's so much more to come yet of the Persian Empire. And so this is like, they're just dealing with yet like maybe 25% have only come. And so to raise the morale, Safia is fighting herself, her brother is fighting, her father is fighting, and obviously people are feeling, what the hell? They say by the second day, what she did was, as more people were coming, she and some people say it was somebody else, other people that did it, but in some narrations, her, she, the women folk, they would have these kind of carriages that were covered and would be on top of camels called hodaj, that she cuts the kind of the cover of that, laying it bare. So basically, you could see all the women folk that were with them in the Zhi-Qaar, meaning that this is basically burning the boats. Like, guys, we gotta. It's Arya Par. This is like basically, if they kill us, they're gonna take everyone. They're gonna take your women, your children, everybody's going. This is talk about. They're like, yeah, she's really dropping us in. Sophia Shaybaniya. So what happens is, you can imagine the fighting really goes up. At this stage, there was a great tribe of Bani Bakr, known as Bani Yashkur. They had been withholding and they had quite a few affiliates. They at this point join. And this gives momentarily like a slight upper hand to the Arabs at this point. But remember, more are still coming of Kisra, and Kisra himself is coming. Oh, King of Kings, man, King Shahin Shah. Rishte mein tumhare baap lagte hain. He's on his way as well, Amitabh Bachchan in this. So it's just madness. At this point, Safiya, Hani, other people have sent out to other tribes saying, look, guys, now or never. Forever have we been subdued like, dogs to the Sassanid Empire. We've been sucking up to them, doing this. Today is the day that we demand our justice. We make a stance. We take a stand. Even Banu Tamim joined their campaign. Banu Tamim, Bade Chaudhries of Jahiliyyah. Even, they still exist, Arab tribes, but in Jahiliyyah time, they were like ruthless warrior tribes. We've spoken a lot about Banu Tamim in the past. So even Banu Tamim, and they're from Mudar, but even they join in this. So they join with, Rabi'ah and Bakr ibn Wa'il and all of these. And whilst this is happening, the news reaches, so more and more of Kisra's tribes are coming and the fighting is intensifying, but it's locked. It's locked. They ain't getting the upper hand, but they're not backing down. And it's going head to head, toe to toe, tooth and nail, people. All this by Safiya Shaybaniya. for vouching for Hurqa, okay, bint Nu'man, right? And because of her beauty, this intensity, we come back, the clamor, the bloodshed. During this, one of the an ambassador, a secret envoy, comes from Kisra's tribe, way ahead of the final batch that is yet to arrive. He comes and he tells Safiya and her father Hani that, look, listen, because remember, Kisra had in his armies, his armies were made up of foreign armies, and amongst his army, especially the latter batch, a huge amount of them were Arabs. He said to these guys that, look, we're going to defect. So, but Kisra doesn't know, because we've had enough of this good for nothing. A plot twist. So they say, do you want us to basically, it's up to you. Shall we come now? And Safiya, this is why they call her the wise person as well. And some people say it's the father's advice, but they say it's hers. She says, no, don't defect, but not yet. Wait till you reach the battleground. Surprise. So what happens? Eventually, all of the army of Kisra has arrived. And with all, they say there's so many, and he now feels, even though it's, it's like going head to head. You've got all these tribes have come together. You've got people, Banu Tamim, which are a huge tribe of the Arabs. They've joined the fight. They've come up to fight. They've joined. You've got Banu Bakr ibn Wa'il, other parts of Rabi'a, other tribes joining in. It's intense, but now more, these huge numbers of Kisra have arrived. And as they arrive and they set up ranks, huge portions defect to the opposite side. They go, surprise. Cha, cha, cha. The Hamari cat, hump attack. This is like, it's surprise. Like, Kisra's like, oh, Abyss. He's like, what the hell just happened here? Huge flanks amongst his kind of flanks. You've got huge, these part, you're talking like what he's relying on, maybe 30% of his thing just defect to the other side. You see, defection, it's not just the numbers, but it's what it does to the morale that is infinitely more damaging. So when such large numbers went across the other side, it shattered the morale of the Sassanid armies, because they thought, because people feel like, oh my God, is everybody going? And then the Arabs, who now, for once, this coalition of warring adversarial tribes, these kind of tribes that hated and clans that couldn't stand each other and fought each other for decades in the past, had all formed this coalition and united to stand up in the face of tyranny. And they charged at Kisra's armies. That was a day of great triumph for the Arabs. They say that and then to make matters worse, that territory, that land, Zhi-Qaar, they say that it had been blackened by the natural, what may have been, like I said, petroleum or oil kind of rising. That the Kisra's army were not accustomed to fighting in such arid conditions without water. And obviously, many of the Arabs who were desert dwellers, they had mini preparations for stuff like this, like small amount of water, used to surviving, going for great periods with minimal quantities of water. I mean, they'd lived like this, many of them. This also completely just flipped. It was a game changer. The army, these astronomical numbers just collapsed one before the other, crushing their own soldiers as they ran for their safety. Kisra himself turned in shame. Some say he died in that battle. Others say he got wounded but fled. And it was a day of great, utter embarrassment, of tyranny. Allah, against a few, led initially by a woman, right? Safiya al-Shaybaniya, standing up and offering protection to another woman, Hurqa or Hind bint Nu'man, and her irresistible beauty that began this whole thing, where stemming from this bickering politics of and betrayal of Zayd ibn Uday, who wanted to get back at Nu'man. Little did he know that there was going to be one of the most decisive and greatest battles, pre-Islamic battles, that was ever going to take place, was going to be a consequence of his action. Huh? Allah, how sometimes the battles choose you. And they say Zayd himself met his tragic demise. He was also then killed as a consequence of this this battle. So, wow, so much happened that people say that all throughout Arabia, right down to the southern kingdom, that the Arabs felt this sense of wow. They couldn't believe that, some Arab tribes had finally not only stood up to the tyranny of Kisra and the Sassanid Empire, but also triumphed victoriously. And people say that even the Prophet said, Allahu A'lam, but they attribute a hadith that Hada Yawmun intasafat fihi al-Arab min al-Ajam, that this is a day that the Arabs gained some justice from the Sassanids. Allahu Akbar. But when you look at the components and the parts and the characters, and it's so incredible. But what a story. You have loyalty, betrayal, love, enamoring beauty, war, bloodshed, triumph, victory, tragedy, demise, all put together in the battle of the Zhi-Qaar, people. So I thought, let me share that with you guys. Vah. Guys, let's wrap this up. It's been quite a bit of somebody said, in the words of Mike Breen, I don't know who that is, bang. Yeah. Shukran, Claire, love these stories. Shukran, I appreciate that. It is really, I find, honestly, there's so much to just learn. It's so amazing. Somebody said, what about Kinda? Kinda were mainly, I believe, in Bahrain and that region. But yeah, guys, let's wrap this up. It's been epic. I would have taken on some some guests, but it's late. I've got an early start. It is Friday though, so TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. But people, in that story, it does teach us we have to be careful of oppression. Look at Nu'man, this tragedy where he kills Uday, and even though he tries to right a wrong by taking care of his son, but how this plays out, in some ways you've got like the story of World War One and Princip killing, what is it, Ferdinand, the Archduke. But who would have thought, this one thing, and you got World War One that goes on for years. Allahu A'lam. May Allah make things easy. Ameen. Guys, shukran. I really appreciate it. What's this? Allah. Mufti definitely saved my iman with the help of Allah. Otherwise, Baybar, may Allah bless you, your kind words. Honestly. That's Ameen. Must this everyone please pray for me? Allah make me a big patron for Mufti Sahib. Ameen. May Allah bless you and grant you and open upon you his barakat. And you're more than welcome. As is like and share, almost 35k. All right, guys, spread the love. And you're more than welcome, by the way, and this is for anyone. You can, if you want to connect, and we do have a Discord server called Mindscape, where we do, we've got a mashallah like-minded, I think a good friendly vibe, a harmonious, compassionate understanding, inshallah. Sometimes we get a few, sometimes you might get some rotten apple kind of coming through, but we always try to eliminate any such things. And you're more than welcome as well to have these people, they want sometimes detailed one-to-one discussions. There is a platform for that now, Patreon. You can go on there, you can book, you do get a session. It is tier 2. It does have a cost to it. It's about £100 approximately, give or take. Obviously, Patreon does it in dollars and stuff, and so that does give you the access. Obviously, that's like the top tiers. Obviously, you have the lower ones, which are just subscription, but that also gives the once a month one-to-one kind of sessions we have, and allows to build that rapport and go deep into these kind of discussions, but also to look at whatever it is that a person is personally in their journey grappling with, because people are on, we're all fighting a difficult battle, and we're all on our own paths, and sure, and for people it's different. Sometimes it's just finding yourself, sometimes it's just conversating, just having a conversation with someone where it's not even, the goal isn't a specific goal, but it's to just allow things to unfold and to see, and just cognitive openings, these, and sometimes they're very focused and learning, and so these are wonderful opportunities. I really do enjoy them, because it gives me an opportunity to get to know people as well. Remember, we spoke today about the parasocial interactions and relationships, and there's many people that I, for example, I think, oh, that I see them all the time, and I see their love and I see their support, but I don't really get to liaise personally with them on a one-to-one basis, so as to come to learn about their personality, or what, their thoughts, and that's something that does give an opportunity to do that. So it's kind of in that way very rewarding as well. But guys, take very good care of yourselves. May Allah bless you. Keep smiling. It is Friday. It is Jummah. So yeah, somebody said, yeah, live session link, Mufti. I think let's leave that till next week. Take very good care of yourselves. Salamullahi alaikum wa khuda hafiz.